Hi folks, as you can hopefully see there, I have a bundle of boxes in front of me. You can obviously guess these are all going to be car parts. So now that the house is well on its way, pretty much moved in, time to get stuck into the car stuff. And for anybody that's watched my M3 blogs, you'll know I like a good parts haul. So hence there's quite a few boxes here for one job. These parts are all for the R32, so it's really to give the suspension a bit of a refresh. I was never happy with the car running on the H&R springs. Thought, I'm going to sound like an old man, it rode very harshly, very firm, didn't do anything for the handling. Perhaps I'm spoilt with some of the Bilstein coilovers in the Civic, but didn't think it drove very well, no benefit in the springs. So whenever one of the front shocks started weeping, thought it was the ideal time to give it a good refresh. So rather than just replacing the worn shock, I've got a bit carried away, as you can see. So we have on the left hand side front shocks, rear spring arm, dust boots, front and rear springs, more rear arms, those are the front control arms, top mounts, bearings, dust boots, OE bolts, dust boots for the shocks, tie rods and their ends. So if anybody's working on a Mk5 Golf of any era, especially the R32 of course, hopefully this video and sort of brief overview is going to help you. You'll see in the description I have links to all the parts, so if anybody wants to know where I've bought some of the parts or likes the idea of them, I have them all linked below for eBay. So follow through in those links if you're interested in any bits and bobs there that way. But anyway, enough babbling, let's show you some of these parts and take you through what I've bought, why I've bought them, etc, etc. And there has been some pitfalls and tweaks with wrong parts being delivered or slightly upgrades that you can do that way. So I'll show you these in detail now. Okay folks, starting off, front shock absorber here. This is actually an OE front shock absorber, as you can see hopefully there with the part number, etc. In short, you can probably see the Sachs box in the background there. Why did I not go for Sachs stuff? In short, it seems to be, if you've done any research, there's a big problem with getting the right front shock absorbers for the R32. A well-known online retailer that has stores across the UK, they provide the wrong part. They could be known as Euro wrong part. Basically the part they provide is for a Passat. It does share some of the shock absorbers, but it doesn't seem to be correct. When you look at that part number they provide on Sachs website, they say it's not suitable for the R32. If you go on the Sachs website and look up what they would send for an R32, they have part numbers that other companies do not recognize as an OE replacement for an R32 shock absorber. So this snowballs on. I obviously want to get the right parts. Wasn't confident that Sachs were providing the right parts. When you contact Sachs themselves, they give you a third part number, and you can also look up the OE equivalent with the VW part number and it gives you another part. It just was a mess. So I knew if I went for an OE shock absorber, while a little more expensive, it's not horrendous money. You can get them at good prices. Again, see the links in the description of the video. But it's still a decent price, and at least it's going to fit. It's the right valving and damping, body length, etc. for the car. So yeah, OE front shock absorber, and handily, you get a free nut with it as well. Now on to the rear shock absorbers, and these are the Sachs items that you can hopefully see there through the part number. These are really cheap to get a hold of, so there's no point in going for a cheap aftermarket brand. Get a good quality item like Sachs, and you'll find Sachs actually make the OE items as well. So that's front and rear shock so far. Yeah, simple as that. Let's move on to the next part. Okay, now on to the controversial part, the part that I sort of was keen to do a bit more and standard suspension replacement on, was the springs. Front spring here, rear spring on the left. These are Sachs items, as you can see. These are OE replacement items, not lowering springs or anything like that there. Conscious decision. R32 is my daily driver. Want to improve the handling and get the ride comfort back into it. And you could argue the car maybe worth a bit more with the standard stuff in it. But look, either way, whatever your opinion is, I'm going for the standard OE style replacement springs. So yeah, these are cheap items to get a hold of from online, etc, etc. So these will match up with the shocks perfectly as well, which is a big bonus. So that's some of the main suspension components out of the way. Let's go on to the next. Okay, next item, getting into some of the hardware side of things. The rear control arm or spring arm, call it what you like. Spring basically sits in here, then goes up to the underbody of the car. This, as you can see, is a bushed item as well, so that will also mean you get fresh bushes. I've went in this case for the brand Mila or Melee, don't know how to pronounce it, but I've always found them really good quality items. And if I wasn't going for an OEM brand, I would generally try to get the Melee and the HD versions if possible, and they're heavy duty versions. In this case, they don't do an HD or heavy duty version of this arm, so it's the standard version. And best of all, you can get them with new OE bolts, nuts, and you'll see the eccentric washers there as well. So that's a big benefit as well, because you're probably going to find all these nuts and bolts are rusted to bits. So obviously 2 of them. And just for speed, you can see there beside me, these are dust boots for the front shocks. This is an OE item. As you can probably see, it's new old stock, but managed to get them for a very good price on eBay. So they're going to go on as well. So time to open a few more boxes. Okay, now on to some of the small upgrades I'm going to be doing to the car, which is based around some of the bushes. These are the rear trailing arms, and you should see there with the part number HD, and that's either, depending on the item, based around the arm design or more commonly the bush itself, which is a harder durometer bush or a heavier duty bush. It can also mean that it is just filled in slightly more. Commonly bushes have quite a few voids around the inside of them, and you could find some of these bushes are just either filled in more with more of the rubber, or as I said, they use a harder durometer rubber. Either way, these are an upgrade over the standard items, and they're new arms, so that's going to be a good refresh. And again, you can see all new nuts and bolts there to mount everything in, so that's a nice upgrade. So that'll hopefully not necessarily stiffen things up, but sharpen things up a wee bit on the rear end, that is. And you can see I'm consciously not going for any polyurethane bushes. Nothing against them, obviously have them in the Civic along with the rose joints, but for a daily car, rubber bush or a couple of polyurethane upgrades is fine, but I'm trying to err on the side of caution and keep it a wee bit softer. Just go for a slightly upgraded rubber bush. So on to the next item. This is will be a very familiar sight to anybody with a Mk5 Golf platformed car. The front control arms and the bushes as well, with the consoles to go with, or the console bushes to match. And you'll see you've obviously got your ball joint up here as well. This is another HD item. These bushes in the Mk5 Golfs are commonly very open. If you remember in the previous bush I was talking about the voids in them, you can see that bush, while not completely solid, is well on its way. And again, an HD item, this is an upgrade that way. You're maybe aware that some people use the S3 bushes, which obviously uses the Mk5 Golf platform. The S3 bushes have less voids in the bush, or use more rubber in the bush design than in the Mk5 Golf design. So this is an equivalent upgrade that way as well. And obviously I'm getting a brand new arm here, so there's other new bushes at each end there as well. And of course a new ball joint at the far end there too. So that's one upgrade out of the way too. Okie dokie, the next upgrade is going to be for the front end, and you'll see these are top mounts. In short, these top mounts with bearings can be upgraded over the standard items too. People commonly upgrade these to the TTRS or V6 TT equivalents. Better quality bearings, slightly firmer top mounts as well on the rubber side of things. So I've went for a slightly aftermarket upgrade on these. You can get the OE equivalents at reasonable prices, but I managed to get these for a bargain. So good quality bearing, an SKF bearing in this case. Certainly don't cheap out on the bearings because they don't last and you have to do the job again. So get a good quality SKF bearing. Again, part numbers are in the description. And of course the top mount and the 3 bolts at each side as well. So it's a case of, while you're in there, you might as well do these. And again, this is a known weak point in the Mk5 Golf platform cars. So onto the rear of the car now, and in this case, bump stops. These again, as you can see, are Febby items, so an aftermarket item. These are oval-ized. The reason I mention this is because there's 2 designs, a round bump stop and an oval bump stop. There's also different lengths to match up with the different legs of shocks. These are what I've measured out, which should match up with my car being oval, the length of the bump stops, etc, etc. Again, it's all linked in the description, but just something to be aware of. There's a few different options there for you. So these are what I'm going for. To match up with these, you have the caps to go over them, and matching up with them, again, good old Mela. These are the rear top mounts, and again, these have to match. Hopefully that comes out clearly. These are ovalized as well, so they have to match what's in your car too. So that's the rear top mounts, everything fresh, any bushes, bearings, etc. in these will all be new then in that case. So let's go on to the next few bits. Next wee part is for the front. This is a set of bump stops and of course the dust boots to match. Again, these are for the front, so a different design to the previous bump stops. And simple as that, simple item there. There's some of the part numbers if they are legible. So obviously all that side of things is brand new. Let's go on to the next few items. The next aspect we're on to is the steering. So these are tie rods, end links and the boots to go with. The rods themselves are standard melee parts, simple as that. And as you can see, new hardware, new nut, etc. with it. The tie rod ends are upgraded HD or heavy duty items, you can see there. And again, you'll see new bits and bobs coming with it, in that case a nut. And the bellows or the dust boots, call them what you like, to go with as well. And you'll see there's also the retaining spring clip, sort of glorified cable tie things to go with them as well. So that should be the steering sorted. Okay, last but not least, we have a set of miscellaneous bolts here for doing all this work. Chances are all of these nuts and bolts are going to be rusted to bits in your car. They're going to come off in bits, trying to get them out, blah blah blah. Well worth replacing them. In this case, things like rear shock bolts for mounting and mounting the top mounts up into the car, and the lower bolt for attaching the rear shock to the arms. Same again for the front. In this case, these are the 3 bolts to hold the front arms on as well. Well worth buying them. There's a bit of money involved in the actual bolts themselves, but it's a no-brainer getting new bolts on there. So yeah, that's the rough sort of parts haul there. That should be most things to get me up and running. And again, just in conclusion, I'm not trying to make a race car with this car. I would be very much in the mindset of living out in a rural area, a blast down a back road, or for a good road car should not be overly stiff. Hence the reason things are getting refreshed with standard rubber bushes. Some of them are upgraded rubber bushes, but everything should be running extremely well and slightly better than OE out of the box, without any harsh ride comfort, which does not make for a good handling car. Anyway, get myself off the soapbox a bit. That's my 2 pence. Hopefully that brief overview gives you an idea of what I have planned and how the car should handle, and perhaps maybe it highlights some of the points that are the issues people have found with doing overhauls in the suspension on the R32, say sending the rear shocks, for example, wrong parts being provided, etc, etc. I will of course do another video once all these parts are fitted. Unfortunately, my normal mechanic has actually retired, so in a bit of a mess to try and get somebody good to actually do the work that I trust. It's actually booked in, so we'll see how that goes, but fingers crossed this really does transform the car and get that ride comfort back up there, and the handling that wee bit sharper as well. Any queries in any of these parts, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll try to help as best I can. Not claiming to be an expert, but if I can't help, just ask. And again, just to reiterate, if you wanted any of these parts, all the links, part numbers, etc. are in the description, so hence I've slightly glossed over some of the part numbers that way. Anyway, as I said, hopefully that was of use. Speak to you soon, and I will hopefully have plenty more videos coming up on either the Civic or the R32. Cheers folks, bye bye.